now let's look ahead. Let's go to some offseason stuff. Free agency. We broke down all the offensive free agents on Monday. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball, where I would say at a macro level, Sam, there are a lot of safeties to choose from. I think that's the strongest position here. And they're also, Justin Simmons and Anthony Harris are two highest graded or two highest ranked defensive free agents. Safety class is definitely a place where teams can improve.
Yeah, if you want a safety in free agency, this is your time. This is your year to jump on it. If you want anything else, a lot more question marks. But yeah, it's a great group of safety. Justin Simmons has been one of the best free safeties in the NFL for a while, and plays free safety in a different way than a lot of them. Like, he's way more active, closer to the line of scrimmage, sort of like the way Earl Thomas always did, right? He was able to play closer to the line and impact some of those plays in a way that people didn't always appreciate. Simmons does a lot of that for Denver. He's got way more defensive stops than a guy who plays as much free safety as him should have. Anthony Harris has been a really good safety for Minnesota for a while, not coming off his best year, but I think is a good free safety ball playing coverage safety as well, but has shown that he can do it in that 2-4-6 cover shell. You know, those split safety looks with Harrison Smith alongside him. But those two are really high-end players available.
Yeah, I'd say that there's five safeties that are probably at the top of the class. The two you mentioned, Simmons and Harris. Marcus Williams comes in at number 16 of the Saints, number 16 on our overall list. And then at 22 and 23, we put Marcus May of the Jets, John Johnson of the Rams. Marcus Williams, I think he's more of your traditional free safety. That's what he's done with the Saints. Can play single high, can play two high. Marcus May has played multiple roles for the Jets. We saw, again, when Jamal Adams left, he filled the Jamal Adams role for a little bit. He played the safety in the parking lot, Greg Williams role, where he was free safety at 90 yards down the field. He's got really good ball skills and the ability to line up all over the place. And John Johnson, if he didn't have some injury issues, might have been top 10 on this list the way he's played when healthy. And he's been a huge part of that Rams defense that we rave about here every single week. His ability to be one of those guys that's disguising coverages and playing multiple roles and making plays on the ball, works downhill really well. I like this group, and man, I like good safeties because you need them in the NFL. You need versatility to combat NFL offenses these days.
Yeah, it's a really good group. All those guys you mentioned, I think, are top-tier safeties. And even if you go further down, there's like some really intriguing players at that position. Malik Hooker, we're still attached to as this guy that could play that single high role and be a real ball hawk in the back end. Pair him up with Keanu Neal, who's also available as that sort of thumper, the Cam Chancellor role in that sort of single high Seattle cover 1, cover 3 type of looks. Like, those two guys are way down the safety list, but are still really high-end starters.
All right, let's talk cornerback a little bit, because this one, you don't have studs at the top that you're just like, okay. I mean, like Byron Jones was kind of the prize last year.
Right.
But then there's always, you have some old guys, you've got some young guys that actually hit the market. William Jackson is the guy with the top potential, I would say. He's our top corner on the list because he could be the top just outside corner. Like, he has the potential to be a true number one, but he hasn't really shown that for a few years now. He's shown flashes, but there was a point where he looked like the next great corner in the league. But you have William Jackson at number one. You have a Richard Sherman hitting free agency again. We have them 1 and 2 among our corners, but completely different players, because Jackson's going to get your 4-year, 5-year contract that somebody's building around, likely. Sherman going to be a 1 year. Likely, we'll see, 1 or 2 years. Let's see, find a contender and see what you can do with them.
Jackson is such a weird corner to try and work out, because he's 28 years old. He's in his prime. He's got all the physical tools you want. He's over 6 feet. He's almost 200 pounds. He runs in the 4.3s. Like, he's the perfect build for corner. And his first season in the NFL, not his rookie year because he was injured for his rookie year, but his first season starting, was arguably the greatest statistical season we've ever seen from a cornerback, ever. Didn't allow a single touchdown, only had 1 interception, but had 11 pass breakups, allowed a passer rating into his coverage of 36.1, which is lower than just spiking the ball every play.
Right.
Allowed a completion rate of 35%. 35%.
Crazy.
Essentially a third of every pass thrown his way was caught. And he did it despite playing Antonio Brown 2 times in
shut
the
AB
season.
down when he was good.
Back when he was in his prime, was putting up Julio Jones level numbers. He went up against William Jackson twice in that season and didn't really get anything. William Jackson allowed 151 yards that year, the whole year. There were corners to give that up in a game. So that was his first year starting. You're like, this guy is about to be the next Revis. Like, he's phenomenal. Then the next year was a real step down. It was okay. The year after that was actively bad. And then this past season was back to being okay again. He's given up at least 3 touchdowns in every season since. He only has 1 interception at most in a single season. Hasn't had the number of pass breakups in either of the last 2 years that he had previously. And the numbers just across the board are worse. So if you're looking at him, what do you think he is? Like, do you think that potential to be a phenomenal corner is still in there and he's dealt with some bad defenses and bad schemes? Or are you like, we just saw a freak run of play and actually this guy is like good, not great?
I think the potential is still in there. I think the volatility of the position also makes me lean to like, okay, he's going to be worth a shot. The problem is going to become who else has his level of skill, right? Who has the size, movement skills, overall just skill set and somewhat track record of at least showing true number 1 outside cornerback level play. Because Richard Sherman, again, is the number 2 guy, and immediately we see the next group of corners that we're ranking here are slot corners, and that's okay, but slot corners are valuable in a completely different way when you talk about Desmond King, Mike Hilton, Troy Hill. You can play outside or in the slot, but he's found a home really and done a great job in the slot this year. Chidobe Awuzie, and he's more of an outside guy, but Brian Poole. This next chunk is all a bunch of guys that are hybrid types or slot corners, and the next outside corners are guys that have way more question marks than William Jackson. We're talking about Shaquille Griffin from the Seahawks, Quentin Dunbar from the Seahawks, and Chidobe Awuzie, who has just been solid across the board for the Cowboys, but never really had that elite season. So I think teams are going to look at William Jackson and say, okay, we're going to take a shot at him, even if it's for crazy money, and he has number 1 cornerback potential.
Yeah, as much as he's risky because the range of his outcomes has been pretty broad, he's still like the safest option out there compared with the rest of these guys. There's some real high-end starting talent available, but it's all massively risky. Like Richard Sherman is old and coming off a really injured season. Like at some point, he's going to stop playing like one of the best corners in the NFL. The other 49ers corner, Jason Verrette, has been like a classic massive risk, right? He paid off this season, played 800 snaps, but that's like the first time in his career he's played a full season essentially. Can you bank on that happening again? Xavier Rhodes for the Colts had a really good year, but is a year removed from being one of the worst starting cornerbacks in the NFL when he was playing hurt for the Vikings, plus he's getting up in years. The guys you mentioned, the Seahawks corners, like Ronald Darby, same thing, right? He's had horrific play, but it had a good year this year and is young enough. There's a lot of guys in here where you say, if things go well, he's like a good number 1 corner and actually makes a massive difference to the defense.
Yeah.
If things don't go well, the guy gets lit up like a Christmas tree and is part of the reason our defense is getting torched.
Let me add one more interesting name to the list. It's Garion Conley, last of the Texans, missed all of the season. He's missed 2 full seasons essentially, and he's kind of a specialist. Grading wise, it is night and day. When he's in man coverage, single coverage, he's excellent. Zone feel, not great. If you get him in the right scheme, like if New England picks him up and says, hey, just go cover this dude, don't look at anything else, could be good.
The problem with that is you're basically limiting yourself to 2 teams now. You can go to New England and you can go to Miami, and Miami have a bunch of corners already.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just saying, keep an eye on him. If you get him in the right system or teams, you got new defensive coordinators.
For the Patriots, though, that should be like Christmas, right? And there's a guy out there that would be unusually well suited to your scheme, and literally nobody else in the league should want him.
Yeah.
So you could pick him up for nothing.
And they might have decisions to make on Stephon Gilmore. There might be a big turnover in New England. Just keep an eye on Garion Conley. Let's go to the front 7 really quick. Linebacker, not great all around. Levante David, easily the best linebacker in this class. He's number 8 on the entire free agent list. He can do it all at linebacker, but beyond that, you have intriguing guys like Matt Milano with the Bills, excellent in coverage and covering linebackers, just, again, not as good all around in the run game. Tackling has some issues. Jayon Brown of the Titans, he's dealing with injuries. He's out for the year, but very similar to Milano. Your new age cover first linebacker who's maybe not as great in the run game. But those guys are intriguing because they help your pass game, and I think that's where teams need to try to find some upgrades.
Yeah, it's not a good group to be chasing that, and even if it was, it's not a good time to be chasing that. Like The NFL right now for linebackers is just a hellscape. It's almost impossible to play. Those are the guys that are getting absolutely targeted and attacked by this surge in offense. And the best sort of example of that is look at all the rookies that came in this year. Linebacker used to be a place where you could come in and you'd be like a Pro Bowler right off the bat, right? D'Amico Ryans. Remember, you come in, he's immediately one of the best linebackers in the NFL. Looks great. Now you come in and you're the guy with the bullseye on him. You get absolutely targeted and just destroyed by these offenses that are attacking that middle of the field and manipulating you and making you go to the wrong place. So all those rookie linebackers have terrible grades, chiefly because their coverage. So if that's what you're chasing, if that's what you need right now, it's just a bad time to be trying to find it.
Let's go to the defensive line and edge defender. We have far more edges than interior defensive linemen in our top 100. We only have 6 interior players in the top 100, but far more edge defenders. The top one for us is Shaquille Barrett, a guy who a year ago we said, look, don't pay for those 20 sacks. You're paying for the production and the pressure and everything that he had done previously. This year, pressure-wise and pass rush-wise, very similar snap for snap, and his sacks have been cut in half. So it's fine. He's a very effective edge defender. We'll see if the Bucs end up trying to bring him back on a long-term deal. Beyond that, you've got Carl Lawson of the Bengals coming off of his best pass rushing season, or the best pass rushing season of any free agent here. He's kind of like William Jackson, right? Flashed it early, hit a lull in his career, showed it again. Carl Lawson could be excellent. And then Jadeveon Clowney's back on the free agent market with far less value now than his perceived value last year at this time.
The 1-year bet on yourself deal came up snake eyes, didn't work out too well for Clowney. It's a lot like cornerback, this group, where there's a lot of talent there, but it's all risky. Shaquille Barrett, I think, is the one that isn't risky. He's like as sure a thing as it gets in terms of pass rusher. He's
solid run defender, excellent pass rusher.
Yeah, and his PFF grade every year is, as a pass rusher, is basically between 70 and 80. He's going to be that guy every year, and the only difference is whether it bounces in his favor in 1 year, you get that 20 sack season. Probably not going to happen again, but he's still really good. The rest of them, though, all have some kind of risk. And you go down Yannick Ngakoue, who's been this one-trick pony of a speed edge rusher and played in multiple different places this year. Melvin Ingram's getting old, but is good, getting old, battle injuries. Bud Dupree has been our classic cautionary tale of athleticism versus production and who's responsible for the production. Largely, it has not actually been Bud Dupree. He's just been the guy taking advantage of some of the stats, but he's a special athlete. He's hitting free agency at the right time in terms of age. Then Trey Hendrickson, who Saints fans wanted to be an all-pro based off his sack numbers. Great timing for him to hit free agency coming off a year in which he had monster sack numbers, even if most of them were unblocked.
There's a lot of buyer beware guys. You mentioned a bunch of them, but buyer beware is probably the easiest for us to identify by using sack totals and comparing to PFF grades. That's Leonard Floyd as well with the Rams. Career high in sacks, similar pass rush grade as previous years. Trey Hendrickson, who you mentioned, good pass rush grade, not as good as the sacks. He's going to probably get paid, though. Matthew Judon was the same thing last year. We said, look, don't look at the 10 sacks. Look at the pass rush production. It was schemed up. We've seen him regress a little bit this year. The one other fascinating name here, though, is Hassan Reddick of the Cardinals, number 87 on our list. Actually, I'll lump him in with Romeo Okwara. Two guys who have essentially a November and December of good play.
Figured it out.
The stretch run for Hassan Reddick and Romeo Okwara, just a handful of games where they were absolutely dominant as they hit free agency. Okwara's got 2,000 previous pass rushing snaps where he was just okay, and Reddick has hundreds of snaps where he previously played linebacker. So is Reddick going to become a full-time edge somewhere else and become like the number 2 pass rusher on a team? Maybe, but yeah, buyer beware on a lot of these guys because of small sample sizes or inflated sack totals when it comes to edge defenders.
Yeah.
So bottom line on the defensive free agents, I think there are names to be had in the secondary. There are role players to be had, absolutely, at corner. There are some good all-around safeties. Safety's all about scheme fit. And I think you have to be careful with the defensive line group because I think a lot of guys are going to get overpaid who by our rankings are 50 or later, and they're probably going to get some big contracts.
The upside of this defensive group is huge, but it's going to take it's going to take teams getting very lucky or being judicially selective with where they go. This is kind of like a test about how much of player evaluation is skill and how science, and how much of it is just lucking out, right, and snagging the right guy and just falling into the right answer. Like, there is a scenario where a team can overhaul a defense with a bunch of cheap players here, all of which hit on their upside, and you end up looking like a genius, right? And getting a 5-year extension as a GM, cashing in and being, one of the best in the business every time your name comes up from a Rappaport or a Tom Pelissero or whatever. On the other hand, you could take a shot at guys that are basically the same, all of whom crap out and it hit the low end of their range of outcomes, and you look like a moron. You get fired and you're crapped out. You're on to the next gig. Like, this is the kind of free agent class that could do that. And people say that the draft is a crapshoot. Free agency a lot of the time is as well. It's more of a sure thing because you've at least seen them in the NFL. But this group is like a draft. Like, I don't know if anybody's going to come out of this batting more than 400 or whatever.
The problem with free agency, though, is you have to put value on it as well. And again, to pay for edge rushers that we have ranked in the 50s, 70s, 90s, you might have to do the whole 4 years, $10+ million per year just to get a guy that we think is buyer beware, really risky. So we'll see. I love it. Offseason has begun. Free agency talk all the way leading up into March. We'll get into some draft stuff as well in the coming weeks. I got a mock draft coming up soon.
Wow.
We're getting into mock draft season. We got a top 5 mock draft on the PFF NFL Daily, so you guys can just kind of get a feel for where we're going with draft season. All sorts of fun stuff, including divisional weekend. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll be back here Monday morning with the usual, reviewing all of the divisional round games. We might have a special guest on Monday. We'll see if I could talk Sam into it. But we'll have even more off-season chatter as well. Everybody enjoy the games. See you Monday.